Welcome back to EDIT 640. It's Joe again, here to present this week's module on production deployment for instructional video. In this lesson, we'll briefly review the critical output settings necessary to optimize the video and audio quality of your final cut. We'll examine the most popular online publishing solutions for instructional video productions. And then finally, we'll identify tools and strategies for live internet broadcasting. Now, some of you may be wondering, what about DVD? I mean, after all, that's a viable output platform. And it is, or rather, it was. It is a platform that is no longer necessary except for archiving in some cases or privacy offline viewing in other cases. It is much more efficient for teachers these days to plan their deployment strategies for online access by their students and parents and other constituents. DVD is no longer a practical medium, which is probably a good thing because it was a pain in the butt to make DVDs anyway. And so I'm not going to miss it, speaking personally, but I don't think teachers and other instructional personnel need to worry about burning DVDs in most circumstances. You're simply going to put them up online at an available online web services platform, and we'll talk about those options a little bit later in this webcast. We don't want to end up like Blockbuster. Look to that as an example of an entity that did not innovate itself quickly enough. We all remember Blockbuster. We all went there. It's now been reduced to nothing more than a streaming website service provider in a jungle of competition. What about Redbox? We're all very fond of that. The only thing, in my opinion, saving Redbox right now is the cheap entry cost. For $1.50 you can get a Blu-ray. That's a bargain. Is Redbox going to end up like Blockbuster? Well, they're trying very rapidly to transform themselves into an online, on-demand web service like Netflix. You can see even here on the bottom or on the top right-hand side here the link that says Stream Movies Now. It's too early to tell, but obviously the streaming market right now is highly competitive, so we wish Redbox good luck, and for the time being, we'll enjoy accessing the DVDs and Blu-rays that we can get out of this vending machine. But mark my words, that model won't exist for too much longer. Everything is going to on-demand. So again, that's going to rationalize not worrying about burning DVDs because online deployment is much more practical for most teachers and instructors. There are 5 important output decisions that producers need to make before they export their final cuts. What codec will you use? What's the correct container file format? What size window dimensions do you need? What's the resolution of the video frame that you want to use? And how fast, what frame rate will you have to use? And finally, what's the appropriate bit rate for the quality setting that you need? Once these decisions are made, you then can either use an existing preset with your editor or you can customize a new preset. And we're going to examine each of these concepts in a little bit more detail. Let's start with codec. Of course, H.264 is by far, finally, the most popular compression format for online streaming and, of course, for Blu-ray as well. It was not always this way. We had so many different proprietary codecs that were competing for developers' attentions. It was terrible. It was an awful situation to be in, having to choose between multiple codecs. And certainly there are many codecs still in use today, but H.264 has emerged as the compression format du jour, and it's probably going to stick around for a little while. So right now, that is absolutely the preferred codec to use when you're exporting your video. Along with that, you need to know what file extension you want to use, what container format will be necessary to get this video up online. And of course, we've seen some consolidation here as well, thankfully. There used to be lots of different file formats, and there still are, but they just aren't used very much. Apple had .mov, Microsoft had .wmv, Adobe had .swf and .flv. These were all competing formats, and they still exist today. But largely because of the mobile computing movement, we've seen MP4, which is a 3WC standard, we've seen MP4 emerge as the front runner finally for container file format. So that's the extension that you'll want to use. and that's the one that we've been using throughout the course. You should remember what resolution means right now. That's simply the term that videographers use to define the dimension sets of width and height in the actual frame that you're using. Now, we know that this got complicated because there were multiple aspect ratios, and the two that were most common were 4:3, which is the older one, and the newer one, 16:9, this widescreen. But to complicate matters further, we had to struggle through understanding what HD is and comparing it to full HD. And now we've got Ultra HD coming out as well for the new 4K television. So this is never going to end probably as the technologies continue to improve. But right now, the target resolution for most of your projects should be 1280 to 720. This is base HD, and that's going to look fantastic on a regular HD television. If you have the hardware, if you have a computer that can edit full HD video at 1920 by 1080, you can consider doing that, but mark my words, it's going to create a much larger file that you'll have to upload, and it may make the editing process very tedious, as we've discussed before. So you'll have to make that decision. Most of you have elected to go with regular HD, 1280 by 720, which is a 16:9 aspect ratio, and that will scale up to any size HD monitor, and it will look fantastic without any letterboxing. Here's something we haven't talked about too much in the course, and that is frame rate. Most of the cameras you're using now are shooting 30p video, even on your phones. And this is very common, it's excellent quality, and it's what most of us are going to use. It is possible to downsize the frame rate just a little bit to 24p, which is a standard for Hollywood. This creates more of a film look for the content that's in your production. In case you're wondering, the P stands for progressive scan, and this simply refers to how the lines of pixels on the screen are literally lit up. In the old days, the hardware that was inside a monitor wasn't strong enough or powerful enough to light up every single pixel at the same time, and so they would only change every other line. And they called that interlacing, and we don't have to worry about that thankfully anymore. Some of your older cameras might still shoot in interlaced video, and it is possible to de-interlace that footage, but for most of us using our phones and our iPads and more recent DV cameras, we don't have to worry about that anymore, and that's a very, very good thing. Progressive frame rates look fantastic, progressive scan frame rates that is, and we want to make sure that we choose our project presets accordingly. In most cases, that's going to be 30p. If you want it to look a little bit more like film, you can choose 24p and accomplish that effect. Hollywood is continuing to push the envelope here. There are a lot of different frame rates that they're experimenting with, especially with cutting-edge movies like Avatar and The Hobbit. But right now, Hollywood is pushing for a new standard, 48 for movies and 60 for HD television. And that may boost up even more once these new 4K TVs come out. But for right now, for teachers and instructors creating instructional video, 30p is a good target. Let's talk about bitrate. This too is a more advanced topic. Bitrate refers to the amount of data that's being transported from the actual file source to the computer to display the information. And not surprisingly, the higher the data rate, the higher the bit rate, the higher the quality. You might notice on here a couple things. In Adobe Premiere Elements, they allow you to set a target bit rate and allow you to create a range so that if you have visually intensive sequences, especially action sequences, you can spike up a little bit and still hit your target average over the long term. And this is a very good practice. It's also a good practice to set your VBR to 2-pass quality. It takes a little bit longer when you're exporting, but it will make the video look much better once you're finished. Pay attention also to keyframes. The default is 90 frames, and that's very good for most talking head or non-high action videos. If you have high action sequences within your project, you may want to use more keyframes. And again, so once you've made these 5 decisions, you can then choose and even customize a preset so that those particular settings will be preserved over time when you do other projects. You know how this works. In Premiere Elements, these are the options that are presented to you. Choose whether you want a DVD to make an online video, a computer, or a mobile phone. And these are kind of forced categories, as we've discussed before, and you can delete these and consolidate these. If you want to learn how to do that, there are plenty of tutorials online. Just Google this and you'll be able to figure that out. It's very easy. You have to go into some of the system folders inside the Adobe Premiere Elements folder and change a couple files and delete a few others. It's not that hard. But more importantly, when you actually choose a preset, in this case it chose a mobile preset, you'll note that every preset has multiple options within it. In that pull-down menu there, the one that we've been using most of the course has been the Apple option for 720. And the only reason we chose that is because that's the one that's bundled with MP4 and H.264. You'll note right here that this is where we've got the compression setting and the frame size and the frame range. This is all good. It also will show us what our target file size might be. This is very useful information. We don't necessarily have to use this preset. As I said earlier, we can customize one, and we do that by clicking on the Advanced option. And in the Advanced option, it will allow us to change some of these settings here, and then we can even change the preset name. When we close it out, it will give us an option to save this new preset under a different name. And again, if you don't like these names, the categories up here, all you have to do is Google Premiere Elements presets and deleting, and it will show you a number of different ways that you can delete that. It's very easy to do. So moving on, let's talk about the really important content in this presentation. What are your online publishing options? If we're not going to do DVD, then what are we going to do? Well, here they are. There are 4 primary options that teachers have available to them, and it's important to point out that these are not mutually exclusive. There's plenty of overlap in these categories depending on the platform and depending on the context. But generally, there are 4 kinds of categories that seem to capture most of the options available. Here they are. The first of which, the course management system, is something that we've been using throughout this course. You finish a homework file, you upload it, and it goes into a discussion thread or a post. To play it back, you click on the link, you have to wait for it to download, and then eventually it plays in your local media player. Now this is functional, and it's not horrible because we do have pretty fast internet connectivity these days, even at home. But it still requires complete downloading before the actual file can play. So it's not as convenient as a streaming solution. Another publishing opportunity would be to put the video file up on a cloud drive. And this is getting really interesting in this space because cloud drives used to be just for storing files for downloadable access, and so it would in many ways be no different than a course management system. You upload it to your cloud drive, it's there always, and it replicates on all your other machines, but to play it back, you've got to click on it and wait for it to fully buffer, and then it would start playing. That's changing now. Google Drive, SkyDrive, and Dropbox all have streaming functionality built into their video file server. And what happens when you upload a video to these cloud drives now, the file format actually gets converted dynamically by the server so that it can be streamed to your learners. And this gets really, really interesting because it creates a scenario where you could keep that video file on the cloud drive and simply send your students a link, and it starts playing almost immediately. In many ways, this is very similar to what hosting services and social media services have done, and they've improved that dramatically. It's still not as good as YouTube, but it's getting much better, so that will definitely be a publishing option to watch. Likewise, the social media services have integrated streaming capabilities now in their online publishing opportunities for their users. Most of you know that when you upload a video to Facebook, it gets converted and it's then available in your post so that the people who are following you can simply click on the video and it starts playing almost immediately. Instagram works the same way, as do many of the other social media sites. So things are getting really interesting in the streaming capabilities of the online publishing opportunities now. Both cloud drives and social media have caught up to YouTube and Vimeo, who are the dominant players in the hosting service market. Now, for this course, of course, we're still asking you to upload this to YouTube and send us a link. But the bottom line is, YouTube and Vimeo right now offer the most professional options, such as dynamic bitrate sampling, which simply means that if you upload your video to YouTube, one of the big advantages it has over a course management system, cloud drive, and social media is not only that it streams, but it will adjust the stream bitrate dynamically depending on the user's internet connection. This is really important so that they don't experience any buffering. In other words, if they're watching your video and for whatever reason their bandwidth suddenly is experiencing heavy traffic loads, YouTube will quite literally dumb down the video. In other words, reduce the bit rate, reduce the amount of data going through the connections to that user's computer, so that they don't experience dropped frames. They'll see a degradation in quality, but they will at least be able to experience and watch the video continuously. And that obviously is very important. So you get a better quality of service currently with a professional hosting service like YouTube or Vimeo. And so we will continue to recommend that. But it's important to point out and acknowledge that course management systems, and especially cloud drives and social media, are catching up quickly. So this will be something to watch very carefully in the near future. But what do you do if you don't necessarily want to put your video up there for on-demand access? You want to broadcast live. In the old days, of course, you had to have connections at the network and at your local TV station. And thankfully, these days, we can broadcast content live. Now, we're used to web conferencing. We're used to Adobe Connect and WebEx and, as of late, Google Hangouts. But all three of these can now stream video as well. In other words, prepackaged video. You make a production and you can host a conference and even video conference with people, and then click the play button to show them a video. And all of these packages will do that. However, they don't do it nearly as well as the professional streaming services, and they're two 800-pound gorillas that are currently duking it out in this arena, and that's live stream against Ustream. Which one is better? Who knows? They leapfrog each other in capabilities every single day. The dark horse in the background is YouTube. YouTube has been playing catch-up to live stream and Ustream with a new live broadcast functionality. So if you are a longtime YouTube user with an account and you don't have any strikes against you, YouTube is rolling out this live broadcast capability. I've been waiting patiently for my name to be dialed so that I can get that, but it has not happened as of yet. And I do have a live stream account, and that's most likely what we'll be using for our video premiere. Nevertheless, you need to know that these two services, Livestream and Ustream, give users the ability to be out in the field, even with just a cell phone, and shoot video, and that video can then be sent dynamically over 3G, over wireless cell carriers, to the Livestream server, so that other users can experience what you're experiencing. And this is radically changing the landscape for live event production. Everything from the local soccer game to the invited instructional guest that's giving a presentation in a school, all of these can be very easily streamed online now, live. Not just captured and posted up on YouTube or Vimeo for on-demand access, but they can be streamed live now. And all of these sites offer these capabilities for free, at least for their starter accounts. So this is something that you'll want to explore. And again, we will demonstrate this at our online live premiere at the end of the semester. So you'll get to see that demonstrated firsthand and see what you think. In the meantime, that's going to conclude this lesson on production deployment. Please see the syllabus for the specific submission requirements as well as the rubric for your final project. And thanks for watching as always, and I'll see you next time.